World War II was filled with catastrophic failures. Some disasters happened in seconds, others unfolded over months. But all of them share one thing. They killed thousands and changed the course of history. These are the 10 worst military disasters of the war. Number 10. The Fall of Singapore. Singapore was called the Gibraltar of the East. Britain spent decades fortifying it. Massive coastal guns pointed out to sea. The naval base could service the entire Royal Navy. 85,000 British, Australian, and Indian troops defended the island. Everyone said Singapore was impregnable. The Japanese invaded Malaya from the north in December 1941. They rode bicycles down jungle paths. They used light tanks on roads the British said were impassable. In 70 days, they pushed 650 miles south to Singapore. What happened next shocked the world. On February 8, 1942, Japanese forces crossed the strait onto Singapore Island. They had 36,000 men. The defenders outnumbered them more than 2 to 1. But British morale collapsed. Water supplies were cut. Fires raged through the city. On February 15th, General Arthur Percival surrendered. 80,000 Commonwealth troops marched into captivity. It was the largest surrender in British military history. Churchill called it the worst disaster and largest capitulation in British history. The myth of European invincibility in Asia died that day. Number 9. Operation Barbarossa. Open's Adolf Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa on June 22, 1941. It was the largest invasion in human history. 3 million German soldiers attacked on a 1,800-mile front. The Soviet Union was caught completely unprepared. Stalin had ignored every warning. He refused to believe Hitler would attack. The first day was catastrophic for the Soviets. The Luftwaffe destroyed 200 Soviet aircraft on the ground. Entire air regiments were annihilated before they could take off. German tanks punched through Soviet defenses. Panzer spearheads raced hundreds of miles into Soviet territory. The situation spun out of control in hours. Within 3 weeks, the Germans had advanced 400 miles. They encircled entire Soviet armies. At Minsk, 300,000 Soviet soldiers were trapped. At Smolensk, another 300,000. By December, the Soviets had lost 3 million men killed or captured. 20,000 tanks were destroyed. The disasters of the first 6 months nearly destroyed the Red Army. But this is where everything changed. The Soviets traded space for time. They rebuilt armies faster than Germany could destroy them. Winter stopped the German advance. The disaster of Barbarossa became Germany's doom. Number 8. USS Arizona at Pearl Harbor. December 7, 1941, started as a quiet Sunday morning. USS Arizona sat moored at Battleship Row in Pearl Harbor. She was 17 years old but still a powerful warship. Her crew of 1,512 men were sleeping, eating breakfast, or preparing for church services. At 7:55 a.m., Japanese dive bombers appeared overhead. Arizona's anti-aircraft guns opened fire. Bombs began falling across the harbor. At 8:06 a.m., a 1,160-pound armor-piercing bomb struck Arizona near Turret 2. One hit was all it took. The bomb penetrated the deck and detonated in the forward magazine. Over 1 million pounds of gunpowder exploded instantly. The hull split, and the end came fast. Arizona erupted in a massive fireball. The explosion was so powerful it lifted the bow out of the water. The blast killed everyone forward of the mainmast instantly. The ship sank in 9 minutes. 1,177 men died. It was the single greatest loss of life on any U.S. warship ever. Arizona still sits on the harbor floor today. Oil still leaks from her hull. Its wreck still tells the story of that morning when America was dragged into war. Number 7. The destruction of convoy PQ-17. Convoy PQ-17 left Iceland on June 27th. 35 cargo ships carried tanks, aircraft, and supplies to the Soviet Union. The Arctic route was dangerous. German U-boats and aircraft hunted every convoy, but the Allies believed PQ-17 had enough escorts to survive. On July 4th, British intelligence reported the battleship Tirpitz had left port. She was hunting the convoy. The First Sea Lord panicked. He ordered the convoy to scatter. The escorts withdrew. Each cargo ship was now alone in hostile waters. This was the moment the convoy's fate was sealed. German U-boats and aircraft found the scattered ships. They had no protection. They could not defend each other. What happened next was a slaughter. For 6 days, Germans sank ship after ship. 24 of 35 cargo ships were destroyed. 430 tanks, 210 aircraft, and 350 vehicles went to the bottom. 153 merchant sailors died. The Tirpitz never even reached the convoy. The order to scatter turned a dangerous voyage into a maritime disaster. Number 7 is a reminder that fear can be more deadly than the enemy. Number 6. The sinking of Wilhelm Gustloff. Wilhelm Gustloff was a German cruise ship converted to a transport. In January 1945, the Soviet army was closing in on East Prussia. Millions of German civilians fled west toward the coast. Gustloff was sent to evacuate refugees from the port of Gotenhafen. On January 30th, 1945, Gustloff departed with over 10,000 people aboard. The ship was designed for 1,180. Refugees packed every corridor, every cabin, every space. Most were women and children fleeing the Red Army. The ship had minimal escort in submarine-infested waters. Then came disaster in the freezing Baltic. Soviet submarine S-13 spotted Gustloff. Commander Alexander Marinesko fired 3 torpedoes. All 3 struck. The hull split in multiple places. Gustloff was top-heavy from too many passengers. She listed heavily and capsized in 45 minutes. The water temperature was near freezing. Most who entered the water died in minutes. Only 1,200 people survived. Over 9,000 died. It was the deadliest maritime disaster in history. More than Titanic, Lusitania and Bismarck combined. The tragedy is barely remembered because Germany lost the war. Number 5. The Dieppe Raid. Canadian and British commanders wanted to test German defenses in August 1942. They planned a raid on the French port of Dieppe. It would last 1 day. Land 6,000 troops. Destroy port facilities. Capture prisoners, then withdraw. Intelligence was poor. Planning was rushed. The Germans knew they were coming. On August 19, 1942, the landing force hit the beaches. What happened next was a massacre. German machine guns were positioned perfectly. They had clear fields of fire onto the beach. Tanks could not get off the shingle. Engineers could not breach the seawall. Troops were pinned down in the open. Fire spread faster than anyone imagined across the exposed Canadian positions. The raid lasted 9 hours. Of 6,000 men who landed, 3,600 were killed, wounded, or captured. Entire battalions were wiped out. 28 tanks landed. None returned. The Royal Air Force lost 106 aircraft. The raid gained nothing. Churchill later claimed it provided lessons for D-Day. But the price was staggering. Number 5 became a national trauma for Canada. The disaster haunted Allied planners until Normandy proved they had learned from Dieppe's bloody lessons. Number 4. The Battle of Okinawa. Okinawa was the final stepping stone to Japan. American forces invaded on April 1, 1945. They expected fierce resistance. What they got was 82 days of absolute hell. The Japanese had fortified the island with thousands of caves, bunkers, and tunnels. They would fight to the death. The battle became the bloodiest in the Pacific. Japanese defenders used kamikaze attacks on a massive scale. Suicide planes sank 36 ships and damaged 368 more. Over 4,900 sailors died from kamikaze strikes alone. On land, every yard cost lives. Rain turned the ground to mud. The crew had seconds to react when Japanese soldiers emerged from hidden positions. By June 22nd, the island was secured. The cost was catastrophic. 12,500 Americans died. 38,000 more were wounded. Over 100,000 Japanese soldiers fought to the death. Between 40,000 and 150,000 Okinawan civilians were killed. Some were caught in crossfire. Others were forced into mass suicide by Japanese soldiers. The island became a preview of what invading Japan would cost. The tragedy forced planners to reconsider everything. Okinawa convinced Truman that conventional invasion would kill millions. The atomic bomb became the alternative. Number 3. The bombing of Dresden. By February 1945, Germany was collapsing. The Red Army was approaching from the east. Dresden was a medieval city filled with refugees fleeing the Soviets. It had little military value. Its Baroque architecture made it the Florence of the North. Then, Allied bombers arrived. On the night of February 13, 1945, 800 British bombers attacked Dresden. They dropped high explosives and incendiaries. The goal was to create a firestorm. It worked. Then came the nightmare no one predicted. A second wave arrived 3 hours later. The fires had created their own weather. Winds reached hurricane force. The temperature in the city center exceeded 1,500 degrees. The next day, 300 American bombers attacked in daylight. They bombed the survivors. The firestorm consumed 15 square miles. Bodies were burned beyond recognition. Estimates of deaths range from 25,000 to 40,000. The city was destroyed, but the strategic value was minimal. Germany surrendered 3 months later. Dresden became a symbol of bombing's moral questions. Was it necessary or was it revenge? The debate continues. What is certain is that Dresden burned while contributing little to victory. Number 2. The Battle of Stalingrad. Stalingrad was supposed to fall quickly in summer 1942. Hitler wanted the city that bore Stalin's name. The Sixth Army under General Friedrich Paulus pushed into the city in September. Urban warfare consumed both armies. Every building became a battlefield. The Soviets fed reinforcements across the Volga River every night. By November, the Germans controlled most of the city. Then the trap closed. On November 19th, the Soviets launched massive counterattacks north and south. Within days, 300,000 Germans were surrounded. Hitler ordered them to hold. Hermann Göring promised to supply them by air. He delivered only a fraction of what was needed. This was the beginning of the end. Winter arrived with savage cold. German soldiers froze and starved. They burned furniture for warmth. They ate their horses. Soviet artillery pounded them endlessly. On February 2, 1943, Paulus surrendered. Of 300,000 Germans trapped, 100,000 had already died. Another 90,000 marched into Soviet captivity. Only 6,000 ever came home. Radio calls turned to silence as each German position fell. Soviet losses were equally staggering. Over 1 million Soviet soldiers died in the battle. Stalingrad broke Germany's army and will. The Wehrmacht would retreat for the rest of the war. Number 2 changed the course of history in the frozen ruins of one city. Number 1. The atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. By summer 1945, Japan was beaten but would not surrender. American bombers had burned dozens of cities. The blockade was starving the nation. But the military controlled the government. They prepared to fight to the last civilian. Operation Downfall, the invasion of Japan, was scheduled for November. Casualties were estimated in the millions. President Harry Truman had another option. The Manhattan Project had built 3 atomic bombs. One was tested in New Mexico. 2 were ready for use. Truman authorized their deployment. He wanted to shock Japan into surrender without invasion. On August 6, 1945, a B-29 named Enola Gay dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima. One weapon changed warfare forever. The bomb exploded 1,900 feet above the city. A fireball hotter than the sun vaporized everything below. The blast wave flattened 4 square miles. 80,000 people died instantly. Thousands more would die from radiation in the following weeks and months. Japan did not surrender. On August 9th, a second bomb destroyed Nagasaki. 40,000 died immediately. That same day, the Soviet Union invaded Manchuria. Japan finally surrendered on August 15th. The world would never be the same. Over 200,000 people died from the 2 bombs. But invasion estimates ranged from 1 to 10 million dead. Truman believed he saved lives. Critics call it unnecessary murder. Was it the worst disaster or the decision that ended the worst war? 80 years later, humanity still wrestles with what happened when we split the atom. Number 1 reminds us that some disasters end wars but haunt us forever.